I am loath to use the term Bill of Rights lightly, for two very good reasons. First, the overuse of any term tends to diminish its value. Second, just because something claims to be a Bill of Rights doesn't mean it actually is one. The bill may be very good, but that doesn't mean it's truly a Bill of Rights. I believe a recent bill filed in the North Carolina legislature gives us an excellent opportunity to test this hypothesis. Would Senate Bill 49 actually create a parent's Bill of Rights, or is it just another example of overpromising and underdelivering? Well, we'll look at that next on the Constitution Study.
Love the neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day we're everyday Americans. Oh, every day we're everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. We teach a rising generation to be free, and I'm glad you could join me. See, there's a lot of talk about parents' rights and bills of rights. It creates a lot of emotion. I want to take a logical, rational view at it. Now, if this is something you like, join me over at the website, constitutionstudy.com. You can find more articles, more videos. You can ask a question. You can join one of my mailing lists. All to just keep involved with what's going on here. There's a couple things that I'm working on that I'll talk about at the end of the episode, but for now, let's take a look at this alleged North Carolina Parents' Bill of Rights. Why do I have an issue with the use of the term Bill of Rights for this legislation? Well, let's start by defining the term. Now, from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary online, we read that a Bill of Rights is a document containing a formal statement of rights, specifically a summary of fundamental rights and privileges guaranteed to a people against violation by the state. It's used especially of the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. My issues start with how frequently what is called a Bill of Rights is not a document with a formal statement of rights. When someone takes a simple piece of legislation and places a Bill of Rights label on it, the meaning gets diminished. Like the boy who cried wolf, people no longer place the weight they once did on the actual Bill of Rights because of the overuse of the term. There's legislation making its way through the North Carolina legislature claiming to be a parent's Bill of Rights. Let's take a look at this legislation and see how good it is and if it's worthy of the title Bill of Rights. Senate Bill 49 is entitled as an act to enumerate the rights of parents to direct the upbringing, education, health care, and mental health of their minor children. Well, that sounds good. Sounds like it could be a Bill of Rights. This legislation, among other things, would create an article in the General Statutes of North Carolina with a section titled Parents' Bill of Rights. A parent has the right to the following. This bill does contain a section called the Parents' Bill of Rights. Let's see what rights it is designed to protect and whether or not it meets the definition of a Bill of Rights from Merriam-Webster. To direct the education and care of his or her child. To direct the upbringing and moral or religious training of his or her child. To enroll his or her child in a public or non-public school and in any school choice options available to the parent for which the child is otherwise eligible by law in order to comply with compulsory attendance laws as provided in Part 1 of Article 26 of this chapter. To access and review all education records as authorized by the Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act relating to his or her child. The first four rights revolve around education. Parents have the right to direct their child's education and moral or religious training. They have the right to determine what school their child goes to and to access all educational records. Of course, that's not to say there aren't problems here. Now, I agree with Article 9, Section 1 of the North Carolina Constitution, which states, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools, libraries, and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Yes, education should be encouraged. In fact, the right to education is guaranteed by Article 1, Section 15 of North Carolina's Constitution, which reads, the people have a right to the privilege of education, and it is the duty of the state to guard and maintain that right. Now, if you read the rest of Article 9, though, or even the whole Constitution, what you won't find is the power to make education compulsory. When the state enacts compulsory education laws, they also regulate what would satisfy that requirement. So when this new Parents' Bill of Rights claims that parents have the right to direct the education of their child, it really means within the boundaries established by the state. Not so much of a fundamental right, is it? The other problem is this state law submits both the state and the parents to the Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. That federal law was not made pursuant to the Constitution of the United States, since the power to regulate education was never delegated to the United States by its Constitution. So the Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act is not the supreme law of the land, and the states are not required to abide by it. In fact, according to the case Marbury versus Madison, that act is void. Thus, the particular phraseology of the Constitution of the United States confirms and strengthens the principle, supposed to be essential to all written constitutions, that a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and that courts as well as other departments are bound by that instrument. So if this bill becomes law, it will make the rights of parents in North Carolina subject to an illegal federal law, which means the rights North Carolina is claiming to protect does not consider them unalienable, since they are subject to other laws. Continuing from SB 49, to make healthcare decisions for his or her child unless otherwise provided by law, including Article 1A of Chapter 90 of the General Statutes. To access and review all medical records for his or her child as authorized by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, as amended except as follows. If the parent is the subject of an investigation of a crime committed against the child under Chapter 14 of the General Statutes, or an abuse or neglect complaint under Chapter 7B of the General Statutes, and an individual authorized to conduct the investigation requests that the information not be released to the parent, when otherwise prohibited by law. So next, this Bill of Rights protects the rights of parents to make healthcare decisions for their children. But again, there are problems. These rights are limited by both state law and illegal federal law. I looked up Article 1A of Chapter 90 of the North Carolina General Statutes, where Section 90.21.1 establishes the legal situations when a physician can treat a minor without parental consent. These situations generally revolve around the need for treatment when a parent or guardian cannot be contacted to give consent. But there is one situation that should give every parent pause, where the parents refuse to consent to a procedure and the necessity for immediate treatment is so apparent that the delay required to obtain a court order would endanger the life or seriously worsen the physical condition of the child. No treatment shall be administered to a child over the parent's objection as herein authorized unless the physician shall first obtain the opinion of another physician licensed to practice medicine in the state of North Carolina that such procedure is necessary to prevent immediate harm to the child. So even if this legislation is passed, a parent will not have the right to make healthcare decisions for their children if state licensed doctors disagree with it. Furthermore, when it comes to accessing a child's medical records, all it would take is a law to override the rights of the parent to review them. Again, from SB 49. To prohibit the creation, sharing, or storage of a biometric scan of his or her child without the parent's prior written consent, except as authorized pursuant to a court order or otherwise required by law, including GS 7B 2102 and GS 7B 2201. To prohibit the creation, sharing, or storage of his or his child's blood or deoxyribonucleic acid without the parent's prior written consent, except as authorized pursuant to a court order or otherwise required by law, including GS 7B 2201. Here the state wants to protect the parent's rights to control the collection or storage of biometric or similar data regarding their children. Once again, we see that these rights are limited by the laws of the state. What other rights is the North Carolina legislature trying to protect? To prohibit the creation by the state or of a video or voice recording of his or her child without the parent's prior written consent, except a recording made in the following circumstances: when otherwise prohibited by law, during and as part of a court proceeding, as part of an investigation under Chapter 7B or Chapter 14 of the General Statutes, when the recording will be used solely for any of the following purposes: a safety demonstration, including one related to security and discipline on educational property, an academic or extracurricular activity, classroom instruction, photo identification cards, security or surveillance of buildings or grounds. Why shouldn't the state get parental permission to record the voice or video of a child as part of an investigation? Well, unless the investigation is into the actions of the parent. Once again, we see the state claiming to protect parents' rights by making sure it protects its ability to violate those rights when it sees fit. Continuing, to be promptly notified if an employee of the state suspects that a criminal offense has been committed against his or her child, unless the incident has first been reported to law enforcement or the county child welfare agency, and notification of the parent would impede the investigation. Lastly, the state wants to make sure that a parent is notified when a state employee suspects a crime has been committed against their child. Well, there is an exception for when law enforcement or child welfare has been notified, and including the parents would impede the investigation. But this legislation places absolutely no burden of proof on the state employee to show that the notification of parents would impede the investigation. There are plenty of reports of child services abusing their powers to intimidate parents and abduct children. So how does this legislation guarantee rights against violations by the state? Now, there are other limitations placed on parents' rights. The requirements of this article do not authorize a parent to do any of the following: engage in unlawful conduct, abuse or neglect the child as defined in Chapter 7b of the General Statutes. The requirements of this article do not prohibit the following: a state official or employee from acting in his or her official capacity within the reasonable and prudent scope of his or her authority, a court of competent jurisdiction from acting in its official capacity within the reasonable and prudent scope of its authority, or issuing an order otherwise permitted by law. And thus we see that the legislature of North Carolina is not so much making a Bill of Rights, but a Bill of Privileges under state control that they are extending to parents. As we noted from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a Bill of Rights is a summary of fundamental rights and privileges guaranteed to a people against violation by the state. What's created in this legislation is not the state recognizing the fundamental rights of parents that are protected from the states, but only rights the states will regulate. Now, I'm not saying this legislation is bad. The state of North Carolina sees the importance of parents controlling their children's education, healthcare, and information, but this is not a true Bill of Rights. Compare the language from North Carolina's Parents' Bill of Rights with that in the Bill of Rights in the Constitution of the United States. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The protection of rights under the Constitution of the United States uses firm language. Shall not be violated. No warrant shall issue. Compare that to the language in North Carolina SB 49. Unless otherwise protected by law, or when recording will be used solely for. Does that sound like a summary of fundamental rights and privileges guaranteed to a people against violation by the state? I understand the need not only to protect the rights of parents, but to protect children from abusive parents. This legislation, however, goes too far. It not only protects students from abusive parents, but allows the state to supersede those parents' rights by simple legislation. How is allowing the state to legislate the infringement of your rights a protection of your rights? Again, I believe this legislation is pretty good and does a lot to protect the rights of parents. It's just not really a Bill of Rights, which further diminishes the term. I hope the North Carolina legislature enacts this law. I only wish it would modify the title of Article 29F to something a little more accurate, something that depicts what this law would actually do. Might I suggest the Protection of Parental Rights Act? So once again, the law is pretty good. I have a few quibbles and qualms that I would want to work out, but it's not a Bill of Rights. All of the rights they list have caveats in them. And when you compare that to a real Bill of Rights, like in the U.S. Constitution, there aren't caveats. The only exceptions to the protection of your rights is by due process of law, which we don't even see in the North Carolina Parents' Bill of Rights legislation. So it's not that I have a problem with the bill, itself. I think it's a good bill. I think they should enact it. I just wish they would change the name and not diminish the term Bill of Rights. If they want to create a true Bill of Rights, then it needs to protect the rights of the parents against government infringement, not with all these caveats and exemptions. Now, one of the things I'm working on here at the Constitution Study is some new classes. And I'm really starting with this idea of a foundation for study. What are the foundational tools we need to be able to study and to study well? And that's what I'm working on. Now, it's still in the planning stages, so don't go looking for it yet. But I would like your feedback. Would you be interested in, say, a mini boot camp where we build the foundation of the importance of the Constitution, how you study the Constitution, and the most important parts of would you be interested? Let me know. Leave me a comment. Contact me at the website, constitutionstudy.com. Any way will work. Please go to the website, sign up for the mailing list. That's how you can be informed on how I'm going. I've got my monthly newsletter, which is where I will announce the new program, whatever I decide to call it. I have my insider where you can follow along as I'm working on it. And of course, you can always have my articles and videos delivered directly to your email. Don't worry about censorship. They're going directly whenever they're published. And of course, this takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of money. If you can help, that would be greatly appreciated. Now, most people think about helping with money. There's a donation button. If you can donate to the cause, I would appreciate it. But I'm also looking for some people that I can work with to help offload some of the more, say, routine aspects of the study, so I can focus on the more creative and foundational aspects of it. If you'd be interested, contact me again through the website. Most of all, I hope you found this useful. I hope you found this interesting. Not simply educating about what's going on in North Carolina, but how do we go about analyzing what this legislation does and what they call it. Now that means that hopefully it's something you're willing to share. Whether you're sharing the link to the video, the article, or any of my social media posts, share this information, please. Maybe bring along a few friends. Join me here next time for the Constitution Study.
Love the neighbors and have